Mr. President, Honorable Ministers, Mr. Secretary General, Mr. Assistant Secretary General, distinguished colleagues, hermanos y hermanas. Mr. President, on behalf of the Government of Grenada, we bring you greetings from the island of spice and sustainability. And while these deliberations perhaps require no further spicing up, we certainly hope that our intervention today will contribute to the sustainability of this institution and the sustainability of our hemisphere in line with the 2030 agenda and in line with the theme of dialogue and prosperity for the hemisphere. Grenada takes this opportunity to thank our hosts, the United Mexican States, for their generous hospitality and for, once again, the exemplary arrangements that have attended the organization of this General Assembly. Mr. President, Mexico has an excellent track record of facilitating multilateral dialogue. Many of us remember only too well the astute diplomacy exercised by your country right here in Cancun in 2010 during the climate negotiations. Your nation was able to renew confidence in a process that had stumbled the previous year in Copenhagen, a process where confidence in the multilateral system and dialogue was momentarily lost. Mexico's efforts reinvigorated a process that ultimately led to the Paris Agreement some 5 years later. This remains one of the most comprehensive international agreements ever achieved by the multilateral system. And it is these principles of dialogue and multilateralism that reunites us all here in Cancun once more. Mr. President, with climate change, progress on development can be reversed overnight for the most vulnerable amongst our member states. This only serves to undermine the principles we hold dear, including development, but also democracy, human rights, and multidimensional security. We therefore welcome and support efforts to make the explicit linkages between climate and regional security. Mr. President, we would further venture that genuine concern for human rights in the hemisphere must also take account of the impacts of climate as an existential threat. We hope that all members of this organization will reaffirm their commitment to the Paris Agreement, which is underpinned by measurable science and the support of the international system. This morning, we actually breathe a sigh of relief as yesterday's storm systems that worried us here in Cancun and elsewhere subside. But today's atmospherics remind us that we must remain vigilant regarding these worrying global trends at a time when the international community is seeking tangible results for the most vulnerable, including through multilateral cooperation and institutional strengthening. The same way that we must preserve multilateralism emanating out of Paris is the same way that we must preserve multilateralism here in the Americas. Now, some say that we have a proliferation of multilateralism in the Americas, but my delegation wonders whether this is not perhaps a reflection of needs that remain unmet by the oldest multilateral institution in the Americas, or perhaps concerns of governance and institutionality. Indeed, we know that institutional strengthening of the OAS contributes to greater transparency, management, and effectiveness, and promotes a comprehensive and inclusive hemispheric agenda that responds to the current needs and challenges of the region. Greater institutionality and better governance will guard against any potential dangers, Mr. President, you will forgive the expression, of shooting from the hip. From my delegation's perspective, the pillar of development is bearing the brunt of, I dare to say, these unguided ballistics. As we know, the Charter of the OAS proclaims that one of the essential purposes of the organization includes the eradication of poverty. I quote, "Poverty constitutes an obstacle to the full democratic development of the peoples of the hemisphere," unquote. Moreover, the Inter-American Democratic Charter and Social Charter of the Americas recognize that development with equity strengthens and consolidates democracies. These two, of course, are interdependent and mutually reinforcing. The Charter goes on, of course, to state that poverty and illiteracy and low levels of human development are factors that adversely affect the consolidation of democracy. Mr. President, studies show that low levels of education is a prominent characteristic of both minors and adults living in poverty in the Latin American Caribbean region. Moreover, we know that there is major inequality in the access to quality education across the hemisphere. This is a tinderbox, Mr. President, for the explosive growth of the drug trade. We heard just this morning from the president of CD. He highlighted the continuous and ongoing depletion of the scholarship fund. This may be a symptom of what we fear could be an underlying malaise within certain organizations of the institution towards the needs of the most vulnerable. Of course, we hope that this is not the case, and therefore the least we can do is to cease and desist from the defunding of scholarships, CD, and the development pillar. Meanwhile, we welcome the contribution of Chile towards scholarships, and we hope that others will join in. We need a predictable set of arrangements in place in line with the efforts of the Inter-American Committee on Education, shepherded, of course, by the Commonwealth of the Bahamas recently. Finally, as espoused by the Honourable Minister of Barbados, we must seize this opportunity to review, renew, reshape, and reform this institution in ways that better reflect an institution fit for the 21st century. It is our view that we are on a course that is, frankly, unsustainable. And in the words of economist Joseph Stiglitz, that which is unsustainable ultimately will not be sustained. This is an occasion, therefore, to reiterate our commitment to the principles of the rule of law, sovereignty, independence, non-interference, and non-intervention as set forth in the Charter of the OAS. Taken individually and together, these principles are enablers of peace and prosperity in the region. In closing, Mr. President, we began this morning with a discussion on the Summit of the Americas. At the last summit in Panama, we welcome our sisters and brothers of Cuba back into a fraternity of nations in this region. My delegation welcomes all such efforts, and we take this opportunity to express our deep concerns for any process, bilateral or multilateral, that would seek to reverse the bonds of friendship, old and new, with our sister nation. Mr. President, you can be assured of my delegation's full support and participation in these deliberations with a view to a consensual outcome on this ambitious agenda. Thank you.